Glad to have been on mute then. A good place to start is what inspired the drive to start the Gradient Boost?
I think it came from like my journey, just like self-learning initially through Coursera, through EDX, through just different platforms initially to acquire skills that would, I guess, like help me become a data scientist. So there's like a long time actually just learning different modules on Coursera and EDX. I kind of enjoyed the self-learning process, but there's no structure to it at all. So I didn't know if what I was doing was relevant or not. And I get this habit of like getting very deep into like rabbit holes. So I do one topic and get really, really, really in depth into it. I'm not really sure if it's actually like a useful topic to cover, like practically. And then I think at some point I started researching like a more structured way of learning. So I found out about coding bootcamps. I found out about like bootcamps like Lambda, like just a few that are available internationally. The barrier was the costs. They were very, very expensive. Like $20,000, $7,000 at the very least. I then decided to kind of like enroll in one of the boot camps that offered a part-time option because I was working at that time full-time. So I was studying data science through data science boot camp while working simultaneously. And even then, the cost was pretty high. I found it valuable to have a mentor who was able to guide me through building projects. I didn't find the content that engaging per se. I didn't like the fact that I didn't have a class or peers to interact with. I found that I enjoy that aspect of learning, being able to interact with peers, being able to interact with mentors on a deeper level, being able to get that engagement and the community kind of feel to it. And the lack of exposure to that was a bit frustrating, but I really enjoyed the fact that I had a mentor who could guide me through my projects and build my projects. I found that what I learned during that particularly building the projects aspect of the curriculum was very, very valuable. And I learned more from just that than I ever did from any other course that I learned. And I found that, I guess like for me, it was, I found that the value of like the coding bootcamps is how practical they are, one, and how they seem to, I guess like make you curious. And the more curious you are about a subject, about a particular topic, the more you start doing your own learning. And it's a bit more structured in that sense too, because you're working towards a project. So it's a lot easier to learn a lot of theory while building an actual project I cared about a lot. So just the exposure to that level of learning, that rigor that comes with the bootcamp structure, I found that very valuable. And I found that it was kind of frustrating that there was very little options available in the continent that were affordable to people in the continent. So that was kind of the inspiration behind the Gradient Boost. And I reached out to people on LinkedIn initially, just like to find out if I could get data scientists to potentially be mentors and potentially help build the curriculum. And the engagement was actually very, very positive from the get-go. So it just then became a full-time venture at that point.
Yeah, one thing I want to say is like when you first had the idea, it was this like very like grand thing, like you were thinking like years in advance, but then also like while you're building the curriculum, and you just had like this fearlessness, like I'm gonna just reach out to people. I want to build this thing. I'm not gonna like hire anyone to do it. I'm just gonna build this thing, and then I'm gonna get people's feedback and input, and then see how it goes. And then you just kind of like steamrolled it into this full-fledged business. And I think like that drive, like that like you know vision and drive really carries through like in everything that we do. I think it really fuels a lot of what all of us do. And like that vision, that's the cool thing I think about that all of us have is like I think we can see this thing going like long term in all of these different ways. And at our calls, I think like Dumebi, you said like we're starting to get confused because there's just so many ideas, like so many things rolling in the pipeline at all times. But that's the thing I like I can't do something if I can't see it long term, if I can't see a big picture, I can't do it. Which is why I don't do well with employment.
I sort of jumped on the bus. I obviously wasn't there in the very beginning, but Emmanuel kind of gave me his vision and invited me for a podcast. And Then there's a bit of research on the gradient boost and where it's gotten. And funny enough, I had a very similar idea myself. And one thing that I found very valuable was the fact that a lot of these courses don't have the personal touch, right? They're meant to be online courses that you kind of do in your free time, and it kind of helps you get upskilled. But what I noticed in the market as I was recruiting for similar roles, data science roles, is there was a lot of the practical experience, a lot of the mentorship, a lot of the guidance that was missing. And I was very impressed to know that Gradient Boost could see that gap as well. And I could see it really fitting a lot of the demands now, and not just the current demands. That's quite a few other things, as Jasmine just correctly mentioned. There's so many ways it can go because there's so many opportunities that being able to upskill data scientists could have, and how you could apply that into roles and opportunities for them going forward. So it's a great idea, and it's sort of heading in the right direction as well.
Nice. I totally agree, right? And for me, I have to say, it's bits and pieces of what motivated everyone. I also came in the middle. I wasn't there in the beginning, but like Emmanuel, mine was from experience, right? I started learning how to code online, but I was just doing it and doing it blindly, right? And so I had the opportunity to go through a software bootcamp. I enjoyed it, but then after the bootcamp, I was thinking, what next? Right? I'm all about upskilling. And so I was looking into data science, but all the classes I was finding, or the courses, sorry, I was finding online were a bit pricey for me. So I had to pause on that. And the back of my mind, I was always thinking, someone should do this, right? Someone should start a data science program that's affordable and it's tailored for the continent. And the reason why I add tailored for the continent is, you see, like one thing I love about Gradient Boost is we use the real cases from companies. So for me, if I'm going through a course, and if actually you ask me what kind of data we used when I was doing my data science course, I have forgotten. But if it's something that's engaging and I'm actually interacting with a company and I'm solving something for a company, like I'm studying while doing real work, it resonates, right? And so I also agree that the vision is big, and I'm very, very when I first went on the Gradient Boost website, I remember telling Emmanuel, you've done an impressive job. I don't think it actually resonates, not only with Emmanuel, but with all of us, that it could have such a huge thing in your mind, but then approach it in bits. I struggle with that sometimes, because it's like, okay, we have all these ideas. When do we take this on? When are we taking this on? But then when you do it in bits, you see it come together. It's something. So I have to agree with you guys.
So it's interesting because on both sides of the table there's a why as well. My why for joining the Gradient Boost as a student is that and I don't know if anybody noticed, while Emmanuel was speaking, I was just nodding my head really, really vigorously because he was speaking my truth. In trying to learn about data, it's very challenging. I mean, it's challenging finding the kind of help that you need, and so there's so much to study. There's so much to learn, and then you wonder, okay, so how do I identify the forest for the trees? And I I remember it may have been a Twitter sponsored ad that I saw, and I was like, interesting. This is interesting. It's funny because the first like 3-4 times I was like, I've seen my own share of MOOCs. I beg, no. But for some random reason, I'm just like, this ad again. Okay. And I went down the rabbit hole and I was like, okay. Mental led. Okay. Let's see where this goes. And here we are. And it's been a decent, really interesting experience all the way. I was trying to hold myself from going into glowing remarks. Maybe we'll save that for later. but yeah, so that's what brought me here, really.
So
I thought you were gonna say you're gonna hold yourself from tears.
me too, actually. Um, but just a question. So having been a student, what was the most memorable experience, or what was the most impactful learning that you took on board that was very beneficial for you?
How much time do you have?
Not much. Less than possible.
Yeah, it's always it's interesting because it's in big things, it's in little things. Being involved, even as a student, being involved in the process of what you see unfolding. But the very, very first moment where I was like, okay, was the very first feedback session, and for me, it was something new. The genuine interest in, okay, so this is what I covered. This is what I intended to cover. This is what I wasn't able to cover. For me, that kind of it knocks it out of the park, because uh, I've always felt that that's the missing piece that conventional education misses. Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good for to have lectures and all of those, but actual one-on-one sessions that move at a pace with the students, it's unrivaled. Um, and coincidentally, the very second one was in the same feedback session. I very randomly asked, okay, so what is up on your end? And it was a floodgate of openness, and I was frankly touched. I don't know that I expected such a response. So yeah, yeah, that's it.
I think it's exciting. Like this one time we had student Ritmo who was supposed to submit an assignment, a take-home challenge for one of the assignments they had in the tutorials. She sent a video recording of her submission, and I think I had a call with one of the mentors, Rafio, at that point, and he was saying that he thinks that she's a lot of potential, but she's a little like shy and not able to like fully articulate her points regarding what she'd done. And then he wanted to have a call with her to just like I guess like motivate her and just let her know that what the work that she did was really really good. And it was just like very very exciting and inspiring, like hearing him talk to it more and telling her that, oh, he thinks that she has a lot of potential, and that he kind of like gave a personal story about how his boss struggled with like I guess like anxiety and fear of like talking to people in general, and how he grew through that by actually challenging himself to ask more questions and to just engage more in meetings. And it's just like very exciting seeing a mentor like who was willing to commit like that much time to inspire and help someone grow. I think at that point I was like, oh, this is really cool. It's like I don't know, it's a really, really exciting moment for me, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're trying to really incorporate, like that empathy part. So making sure the mentors aren't just good at like delivering content. That's cool, but like actually being able to like reach out, motivate, relate, things like that. And I think, for example, in the beginning, that wasn't something that we were checking for on the mentor side as much. But like going forward, we're trying to make sure that we're in the vetting process, that you know we can ask them seemingly dumb questions and then like they don't like blow up on you or tell you it's a dumb question. We never want that to happen. Um, so I think going forward, that really speaks to the community we're trying to build, meaning that you might have a mentor or like maybe even another data scientist on the platform who's not like a mentor, who can, if you write something like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, can come in and say, listen, this is, I did too. I came from a similar background as you. This is what worked for me. And maybe it works for that student, maybe it doesn't. But I think just like the fact that that you have people who even care, who can speak and say you're not alone, really can help somebody. Because I've heard it multiple times from students, and obviously I've experienced it myself. Like learning it's lonely, it could be a really lonely journey. And like you're stuck with your own head and you're like, I suck at this. and like there's no one to tell you otherwise. There's no way to get feedback. There's no way to get out of your own narrative. If you're continuing down this path with your own narrative, like sometimes you might even think like, I'm amazing at this thing, and maybe you're not at the level you need to be, and somebody needs to identify that for you. Even had a student, before the linear algebra section, was like, I got this, don't worry. No, he's like, I'm not even gonna. I said, yeah, but just make sure you stay on the path. And then the next week in the feedback call, he's like, Jasmine, you were right. Like little things like that. And it's not to like, put anyone down at all, but like having a realistic sense of where you're at. And at the same time, when you're like on too high on your horse, like someone to like, make sure you're like good, you're being, realistic, and you're like in it for the long haul. Like when you're also struggling, someone's there to pick you back up. I'm excited to see how like that dynamic that we're trying to build really works.
Yeah, just to go on top of that, actually. So the great thing is, right, so there's obviously the set of skills you need, the Python skills, understanding of the algorithm, the methods, and the tricks. That's great. So that becomes your tools, right? But when you're in a job doing this, there are other skills that can be difficult to pick up from the training. But you more or less try to pick up from the job or from experienced people on the job, right? And that's how to apply those tools to a problem. So quite often what you find is students or practitioners have had a lot of experience in Kaggle competitions and Zini competitions, and have worked with sort of dummy data sets that have given you some view of there's a challenge and there's kind of a right answer, so find the right answer. But what you find is, particularly when you work with real data, and obviously there's one clear point about the Grading Boost, that you actually work with real data from real problems from real companies, is that is not so tidy and neat. And sometimes the right answer requires you to really work on a path and plan ahead and persevere and and make mistakes, which can lead you to the right answer. And I think a lot of times I've come across people not happy with making mistakes, going down a path and failing, and finding that to be, oh, I'm not very good at this, right? But that's actually a major part of the job, discovering things, learning from mistakes, and then trying and iterate and trying again. And I think, where you want a data scientist to be before a job is to understand that process, not necessarily be fully experienced in it, but to know that you don't always get the right answer the first, second, third, or fourth time. It could take a number of attempts. And knowing that there's some practice on real data where you get to experience that, knowing that you can talk to people who've been in the job, who know that that's part of the process, I think just gears you better for the real world. And I think that's really it, trying to get the student to understand the real world before they get into the real world of data science. And I think that's kind of what comes across in the course very well. So it's very impressive to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you also find right now, big tech companies are not looking for people who've done like 4-year courses, right? It's less of you having engaged and touched on everything, but more of, can you learn on the job? Because that's what the tech field requires, right? It requires, can you hear me? Sorry. Okay, it requires for people who can adjust accordingly, because we can be learning something right now, but then when you go into the work field, it has evolved, right? How many times do like the new language, like programming languages release new libraries or new things that you have to learn? So it's less of you've done it in school, and it's more of, can you learn on the job? And I think, yeah, I agree with you maybe on the matter of that's something we really emphasize on. I'm actually enjoying it. The other thing I'm enjoying, which, sorry, taking you guys back, is the one-on-ones, the way Ajibola was saying. So for me, I've had it both sides. When I went through my tech program, I was a student meeting my mentor for one-on-ones. And I remember at the back of my mind, I kept on thinking, but okay, as much as I'm taking, am I adding anything to them? So I made it a point to be asking, are you okay? Like such things whenever I'd feel like he looks low energy. But now when I interact with mentors in the program and students, it really excites me. And I can say just by interacting with them, number one, I learned so much. Number two, just being able to tell them I've been there and you're okay, it does something to me. And lastly, I have to say that I actually find myself more excited about the sessions more than then, just to get to hear where they are and just to see them grow through the journey. it's really exciting. So yeah, those one-on-ones are they're really key for them, for our students, our mentors, and for us. Yeah.
So, and I guess this question goes to everybody. What would you say? So it's a two-pronged question. What would you say the challenges were starting out, and what are the ongoing slash current challenges right now? Emmanuel, do you want to start?
I think starting off was structuring the program. So in the beginning, I think you experienced that too. The program wasn't as structured as we're trying to get it to be at this point. Initially, we started off with this model where we thought that we would have the mentor sessions as a chance for students to ask mentors questions. And instead of like preparing content in advance, we would like leave it up to the students to decide what they're struggling with and then have a session based on that. And then it became apparent very quickly that people are very cagey about asking questions, it seemed. We weren't getting enough questions to be able to just follow through with that model. And I understand. I think it's like, as a student myself in the past, I would have had the same issues. It's like I don't know what I don't know sometimes, maybe. So it's very hard to ask questions like in the beginning, especially. So what we tried doing was then we tried having mentors prepare material for tutorials before each tutorial. We didn't have like a tutorial schedule planned out at that point. We only had the workshops planned out, the weekend workshops planned out. And then it became very apparent that there is a little like inconsistency in how tutorials can be delivered. Different mentors have different styles of delivering content. And that can generate some confusion around what to expect with each tutorial from students. And then because a lot of students work full time, there's the issue of how much time should you allocate to a particular day? Like how much time should you like set aside to attend tutorials? If you don't know in advance, it becomes a little tricky to plan your week out. So with the next program, we kind of like planned a course schedule in advance. So we knew, so a tutorial schedule in advance. We knew tutorials would be held at which particular week. And again, we learned that there's a challenge around from the mentor side. Mentors work full time, and it's kind of a bit difficult to expect them to be able to create content for each tutorial beforehand. And again, the same inconsistency issue could arise where you have different people delivering different content using different styles. Again, which can create confusion around how much time to allocate to different tutorials. So what we've moved on to is a model where we have the tutorials planned in advance and the material prepared in advance, so that the mentor has the material beforehand for each tutorial. They can then modify the content based on what they think is more valuable, but we kind of have a consistent structure for all the tutorials going forward. And then one thing that we didn't do well in the beginning was to give learners a chance to practice what they've learned in each tutorial. So what we're doing now is we have a model where we, first of all, we give the students the course material before the tutorial actually starts to give them time to prepare for the tutorial. I think that's actually one of the points Ajibola raised in one of our check-in calls, like preparing for a tutorial in advance so you can ask questions. You can't engage if you don't know what material is going to be covered. So to increase engagement, give them the material in advance so they can prepare for it and then ask questions once the tutorial starts and engage more. And then to ensure that they actually practice what's been taught to them, we give them a take-home challenge, which they'll then present in the next week's tutorial with the same mentor. And the idea behind that is that we want them to gain technical skills, obviously, but at the same time, a very, I guess like a skill that is very important is that the soft skills that are required to collaborate with people are often like neglected with online learning in general. So the presentation gives the students a chance to present their work and the insights of their work to a mentor and their peers, and get questions from the mentor and their peers. So that level of like being able to present your work on a weekly basis would hopefully give them more presentation skills, more courage to communicate their work and their insights to their peers and other people they'll be working with. And then we're incorporating a model where we give students case studies from real world companies to give them, like Vivian was saying, and Dumebi was saying, exposure to real world data and actually like understanding how their skills can be used to solve a real world problem. Yeah, so the challenge has just been like learning on the go, I suppose, like figuring things out, getting feedback and being able to adapt to the feedback we get as quickly as possible.
I actually wouldn't even call that a challenge. I think that's a beautiful thing. Like we were saying the other day, like yesterday it seemed like a lot went wrong, but we were saying like we're glad that it's going wrong now, when we can like understand all these pitfalls so that we can change. And one thing that I'm really proud of all of us for is the iteration, how fast we take in feedback and how fast we evaluate, okay, does this feedback make sense for us? Does it like contribute to where we want to go? Yes, boom, done, move on it. And I hope that's something that we can continue doing, because that's something that like, I don't think we would have made it this far if it weren't for all of the feedback loops that we put into our program. And then all of the, like, I think we seek out criticism, which well used to be a very foreign concept to me. But now I'm definitely learning how valuable it is. And like Ajibola will tell you, like, like he's not gonna hold back if like on a one-on-one call if he has something to say. But like I appreciate that. That has caused it like alone, like the suggestions that you've had alone have been very valuable. Other students too, mentors, even like talking to companies, talking amongst ourselves, all of that. Like not being afraid to challenge ideas, not being afraid to just like, you know, we're not in this like echo chamber where everyone's like says has an idea. It's like yeah, cool, but you're not saying what you really think. That's one like culture thing that I really appreciate. And I know Emmanuel started writing that in, like when we hired our very first like sales person just this week. I know Emmanuel like wrote in the job description this huge culture, like 5-paragraph thing about here at the Gradient Boost, we're underdogs and we believe in, and we have had some arguments about the underdog thing, but yeah, that's just one aspect of the culture that I really like.
I think it's very easy to take criticism like personally, and not evaluate what aspects of what's being criticized about you is actually like legit and should like prompt you to look at yourself and evaluate yourself and change yourself. I think it's very hard to do that, but once you're able to take in criticism, sometimes it's malicious, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. You take it in and you figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. But you take that in and you learn, I guess, like how to first respond. Because the way you respond to someone criticizing you says something about yourself anyway. So you learn more about how you respond to different things that may affect your self-esteem or whatever ego issues you have internally. And you kind of like can pick out objectively what actually applies to you and then evaluate whether or not you can change that or it's part of yourself. If it's part of yourself, then how do you work around that? Like, how do you, I guess, like taking that feedback to work around you to prevent that being a problem going forward? And we try and like do the same with the gradient boost, like to take in criticism and figure out what is objectively true and then readapt based on that. But that requires us to be able to actually take in criticism and not take it personally.
Is Dumebi on mute? We can't hear you, sorry.
All right, is that better?
Yeah.
No? Okay, brilliant. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was saying that I'm quite new to the team, so obviously I'm still learning the dynamics, but you know, honesty is always the best policy, and that's kind of how I normally work. And I sort of get the sense that that's how everyone works as well. I think the right answer is actually somewhere between all of our opinions. So it's important that we take that feedback, and we've had situations already where we've had, I won't say disagreements, but conflicting views. And it's been great how they're handled. Actually, I've been very impressed because it kind of leads into a negotiation where we're kind of going back and forth to find that right point. And that's kind of where the right answer is that negotiation process. And the only way you can really get there is if everyone's willing to hear everyone else's opinion and take feedback, positive or negative, and then work around it. And really that's the key to success in my honest opinion, because something like Gradient Boost has so many angles and directions you can take. And the best way for us to remain focused is to always be able to share our opinions and then decide how to consolidate and navigate. And I think it feels like that process is being done very well. And I don't know whether we need to, whether it needs to be formalized. I've not yet seen Emmanuel's culture documentation, but I feel like whatever we can do to maintain that, it should be done, right? Because I think that's really the magic, where there's always that contribution, consolidation, and then navigation. Right? So we just keep doing that. I think that's great.
Yeah, we've been with anyone that we bring on board, whether like mentor, content creation, whatever. We've been saying that like you have to be able to give and get feedback. you that's like written into the job description. Like you must get, like you gotta speak. You can't, but, and it means that your role is not just like, it's not just, oh, you are creating content or you are only doing sales. No, part of your job is when you're doing sales, at the end of the week when we talk, we want to hear from you. What has been working for you? What isn't working for you? What do you think that we should change? And even in there, it's like you're, especially in these early stages, like what we say to do is, it's not like the word, you also have domain expertise. That's why you're hired. So you can tell us like, hey, this process doesn't make sense, or like this doesn't make sense, or this is cool, but here's another way to go about it. And like never really, treating ourselves as like gods or anything like that, I think might take us far. I think a lot of people kind of like, they hold on too much to the, this is my company and, this is my vision. And that obviously has a lot of cons. I mean, I don't know of a situation where this can really go that badly unless someone just starts like, just completely just like criticizing us at every turn without being constructive. But I'd hope to think that we'd be able to catch that kind of personality trait beforehand.
Totally. So I'm also finding my footing in the team, trying to balance things out. Coming from a startup background, I have to say, I don't think we've faced challenges, to be honest. I'm actually enjoying my time at the Gradient Boost, and I won't go deep into it because I don't want my other ventures to feel some type of way. But yeah, I don't feel like we've really experienced any challenges. And with that said, I think when I met Emmanuel and he was telling me that he runs an online data science academy, he has 5 people already paying. I'm like, what? Traction and people paying for your product? That was mind blowing for me, right? Because I went through an accelerator program, a 1-year software entrepreneurship accelerator program, and people were pitching ideas with no traction, and we got funded. So this was huge for me, because with investors, you hear them say want traction. With partners who want to work with you, they say they want traction. And yeah, with Emmanuel, I just thought he had made it. I don't know why he was even pitching the idea to me. I was sold. Just the fact that he had already started and gotten people to pay for his school, I was sold. So in terms of challenges, I haven't seen anything yet. The thing I would want to see, though, the thing that I'm excited about, which we've started getting, is for TGB to sell itself organically. We're seeing students making referrals, and yeah, we're getting students from people who've already gone through their program. So that's exciting. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing more of. Yeah, so that's about it for me in terms of challenges. I had a question. This, I think, mainly goes to maybe in Jasmine. And Ajibola, I'm not sure if you work. So how do you guys balance it all out? So for you, Ajibola, if you're a student and you're doing something else on the side, how do you balance it? I know Dumebi works, and Jasmine, you started working and you're also doing Gradient Boost. So how do you guys find the balance to do all of it?
I can start. So I actually have quite a few things on. So the 9 to 5 is the 9 to 5, right? But the good news about the 9 to 5 is it's 9 to 5. So you can start at 9 and you end at 5. So I actually get up super early. I was teasing Jasmine earlier, but I actually get up quite early. I'm actually up by 5 most mornings. And so I'm squeezing about an hour and a half to 2 hours of side hustle, so to speak. And then when I end my day around 6, I then usually work another 2-3 hours, and sometimes longer. But what kind of fuels that energy? Because you're obviously tired, and that's not really your most optimal time of the day. It's just the ambition and the passion, right? And that's why it's really important to do what you enjoy. I see so much potential in the Gradient Boost. So when I'm contributing, whether it's early in the morning or late at night, it feels easy because I'm being carried by that ambition, excitement, and optimism. So it's, that's why it's really important to do. That's kind of why I also felt it was quite a good opportunity and a great place to be. In fact, mirroring your point, Vivian, I was also quite impressed with the progress already made. The traction, absolutely. I think traction is so important, and to know that that had happened from my view, fairly easily. Just testament to the idea, and then just seeing how I might be able to contribute in so many different angles just kind of got me really motivated. So I guess it's the motivation and the adrenaline that carries me, but at off hours of the day and weekends as well sometimes.
Yeah, I'd definitely say yeah, I'm not a dedicated, I'm not a very consistently, I want to choose my words carefully. I would not consider myself to be the most like dedicated person when it comes to things. Like I'm not a very regimented person at all. Um, it's more like I try, like when my productivity spikes, I'm gonna go for it. When it's lower, I'm a little bit more forgiving and I'll try to like switch to something else that is on my plate that's like lower priority or that I can carry along. So I kind of like do like the whole wind in the sails kind of thing, which I know does not work well for a lot of people. But over the years, I've just learned myself and it works for me and I'm gonna do that. Um, otherwise I notice a lot of wasted time. If I'm trying to sit and like bang my head against the wall, trying to do something that's just not working, then it's in the end, when you look at output, nothing gets done. A lot of time was spent and it looks like, I was doing something, but nothing gets done. So I had to really learn myself and just accept, the way that my brain works. And with that, basically, we were both full time for a while, but it's very financially risky for us both to not be, having some income. So I got a part-time flexible job in tech sales. And I specifically went for this role because it allowed me to have a flexible schedule and only work during certain hours, like concentrated hours. And then it's not even like the whole time I have to be on. It's just like whenever like a call is scheduled. So I can see my schedule like, okay, I could have had 4 hours of call, but I might only have one. Great, extra time for me, still get paid the same. So I specifically held out for a flexible position because I could have went and just gotten any old, part-time job, but I specifically needed one that worked for my energy flow and worked so that I can maximize for my main priority, which is the gradient boost. And then, hopefully I can cycle out of that. We technically still have our other venture based in South Africa, but that one is like, we've scaled it down so much that we're really big on outsourcing with that one. So yeah, that one really doesn't take up much time at all. Like we have one meeting a week with some stakeholders pretty much, and the rest of the time we're just communicating on WhatsApp. And then I have like all these other little projects that I want to do, but literally, yeah, those just don't get done really. But that's that's like a therapy session thing. We don't need to talk about that right now.
I think just going back. Sorry.
No, you go, Emmanuel.
I was going to go back to the challenges part. Sort of something now I think that I saw as a challenge, but maybe I don't know if it is. I actually was concerned about the traction that we're making, to be honest, from the get-go. I guess that I had expectations like from what I was seeing with the leads generated in the beginning. Because in the beginning, there was this research phase where I was reaching out to potential students to understand if they potentially like would enroll for the gradient boost. And the response that we had at that point, like just this was more for filling a survey kind of thing, filling a type form kind of thing to indicate your interest. But there are a lot of questions attached to the type form. And the idea was that if you're willing to answer these questions, then it shows strong intention. I think based on that feedback, I had maybe like mismatched expectations, and maybe they're a bit unrealistic. And then when we had to like, I guess, discount the course in the beginning and offer some spots for like a competition, I was like, okay, this is not going the way that it should be going. But I think it's just readapting your mindset to understanding that things will not go as you had anticipated because you had prior assumptions which haven't been validated. And it's a matter of how quickly you can readjust your assumptions, your expectations to match reality, and then grow from there. I think that's always going to be a challenge anyway. I think it's maybe a challenge with most startups, maybe I'd assume. I think the other challenge that we have that I think is a big challenge, in my opinion, initially was the engagement, the tutorials. I was a bit concerned about like very limited engagement in students and mentors. And we was thinking of ways to, I guess, like increase the engagement because I thought that I still think that learning isn't a passive process. You can't just sit back and listen to a tutorial and learn. You've got to actually engage with the mentor to actually be getting value from the tutorial, to ask questions, to try things out yourself. And I think it's just figuring out what more we can do to encourage students to engage. Is it more for creating an environment that enables that to happen? Is that building that into the structure of the tutorials? Is it like maybe putting certain questions at certain points in the tutorials to kind of spark a discussion? Even when that happens, you get like a radio silence basically. And how do you go about like actually making people more comfortable to engage? And then in some scenarios, you find one or two students who engage a lot, but then they're the only ones who are engaging. Like generally speaking, the only ones who are presenting their assignments. And then the concern is then, what are the other students doing? Are they confused? Are they understanding the content that's being covered? Are they not asking the questions they should be asking because they're not comfortable asking questions? Is there an environment issue? Is there something we're doing wrong? So it's always that concern, like regarding engagement, especially. I think the other concern that I've had was there's actually multiple concerns that I tend to have on a regular basis. It's around like the mentors themselves, like how are they coping with it, balancing their work and mentoring. Like are they getting value from mentoring students? So we try and in the beginning we didn't have regular check-ins with mentors, but now we're trying to check in with mentors to understand if they're actually getting value from this program. Because the way I see it, when you are mentoring someone, you're also learning too. The act of teaching someone something helps you understand something in a more in-depth way, I suppose. Just understanding if they're getting that kind of value from the gradient boost. Sorry to take us back. I think you're going to talk about your experience, like managing your full-time work and studying, Ajibola.
Yeah. So as it is with these things, there's a. I mean, at some point there's a tranche of free time, and I don't know if you remember. I think I was on a call with Jasmine, and she said, "Oh, how many hours did you get to study this week?" And I was like, 40 hours, and I think she must have been quite a little bit shocked. And then quite suddenly, I didn't have that. How do you say? I quite literally had to have a very similar schedule to what Dumebi has. So a couple of hours in the morning, I'm up at 4 usually every day, and then a couple of hours in the evening as well. But I guess what usually is the fuel is one, weirdly enough, is making progress, seeing that you're making progress, and but more importantly, remembering where you're going to. I mean, for me, that has always been the drive. So more than anything else, it's really challenging. I do have to be honest. And then there's times when the demand of your everyday life uh, takes that much time that you almost can't even get any time at all to study. So yeah, that's been the journey for me, or the experience rather.
I think one question I have for you is you had interviews quite recently with a few companies, or two companies rather. I'm keen to understand how you found that experience. How do you find the experience of the interviews that you had recently, actually?
Okay. It was it was interesting. I think a big part of it starting out was convincing myself that okay, you know what, you're not just an imposter. you you actually have put in the time to learn this, and I guess so. It was, there was so much, and as anybody who has attended any interview of any kind, is that there's so much uncertainty until the very first question, and then you're like, okay. So but once I got the first question out of the way, there was a certain confidence boost, like okay, so it's not as bad as you assumed it was going to be. And then it was just one question after the other. And then, of course, it's also drawing on the reserves of what you've learned so far. And mother of all surprises, like you, okay, so I'm actually not an imposter. Okay, so I do know these things. Okay, so I actually am going to be useful to you. Okay, awesome. Let's do this then. But yeah, so all in all, that was it, it was an interesting experience. I'm not going to be funny and say I want to throw myself at another tranche of interviews, but it wouldn't have, or that it wouldn't hold as much of a boogeyman moment, so to speak, as just before having the very first one. So yeah.
Awesome, and congrats on the offer, by the way, that you got. Tell us more about that, actually.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, thank you.
Who was that?
I think you're mute.
Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to say the name of the company?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, yeah. So despite the offer is from Sparkle. It was interesting having conversations with the data lead and eventually the CEO. It gave a bit of insight into what their mission is and what they are trying to do. And I got the impression that they were just as motivated by bringing someone on the team at whatever level, but just as motivated by adding to the team as much as they were motivated by, okay, so this person who is coming on, how do they fit in with our current culture? And for me, it was interesting because then it shows a level of thinking that yeah, you see it often, but you also know that there's a level of care that 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 they've applied to their team that would apply across the board with whatever projects you're going to take on, whatever problems that you're going to have to deal with. The call for the offer uh, came as a sort of surprise, and I mean, I won't say the interview went bad, but I was like, okay, fingers crossed. And then their HR person called and asked, "Oh, when would you like to start?" I was like, "Start? Oh, me?" And 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 I was like, "Oh, okay. I'll I'll be happy to start at this time." And that was it.
This my
Nice. I have a
sorry.
question on that, very manual.
Thank you.
So, what were
Sure.
your expectations when you were coming into the gradient boost, right? And like, what were your plans with your data science skills after? Was employment at the back of your mind?
I'll be honest with you. I honestly would have been happy to. I wanted to learn something. I wanted to be able to apply what I've learned, or what I'm learning, and I find that most of everything that I've learned so far, it usually has been a situation of, oh, I'm trying to do X project or do X thing, and then I need to learn Y skill set to be able to apply it to this. And it was one of my major challenges in learning about data and the entire space. So for me, um, the hope and what was the big draw to Gradient Boost for me was, okay, so I'm going to find a way or figure out a way to apply the skills that I'm learning, and this platform provides that opportunity. I'll be honest with you. I can't say that I knew that an offer would be at the end of the journey, but if I had made a personal, how do you say, commitment to myself that regardless of what it was, even if it would, if, even if it would eventually become having to volunteer at the start, at a non-profit that I knew had a challenge with dealing with data, I would, because for me, the goal was apply, 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 apply. So yeah.
I guess my
Just a
question.
question on that. So go ahead, Emmanuel.
By all means.
I'm trying to go first. Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I just wanted to know. It's quite a difficult one to answer, but if the grading boost didn't exist, obviously I presume your journey would be quite different. But do you feel as though the grading boost uniquely positioned you for this eventuality? Or how do you think this would have gone without the support you got from the grading boost?
I'll be honest with you. It's not a very, very difficult question to answer. So I'm of the opinion that having gradient boost was, or that is, it was a catalyzing moment. So it pretty much shortened a journey of. So let's assume your car shortens your journey of, say, a 2-hour walk to 10 minutes. That pretty much was it for me. I know I would have struggled with confidence. It's funny because I have a lot of confidence in my person, but it's a world of difference. Okay, so yeah, I know I can do this too. Okay, so being pushed out into the world, and okay, so now you should go and do this. So yeah, it's more than just a learning. It's also catalyzing the very next logical step.
I guess the question that I had for you is that so based on the interviews you've had so far, what do you think we can do to better prepare yourself and your students for potential interviews? What can we do to better prepare people for that?
I guess the biggest one really is a mock interview session with questions that students would actually really be dealing with. So like, so a small panel, and then just throwing the questions, testing for response to stress, competence, and then because there's a whole universe of uh, behavioral questions that can be asked, but there's a small framework for dealing with any behavioral question. You understand? So in terms of preparation, having or rather sharing a small framework for, okay, so no matter what the behavioral question you're going to deal with is, this and this and this ways are the ways that, adding your own personal peculiarities, you can handle whatever comes to you. Then of course, as with the as young people will say, as with the energy of the gradient boost is that getting a real world interview experience. So sitting before a panel to practice those frameworks in the first place. Yeah, I think bundled together, it would prepare anybody really, because out of the gate, it's the not knowing that makes you feel like, oh man, I'm not prepared enough. Oh yeah, I was going to say a mock interview that doesn't have anybody here on it. Like, so you get people who actually work at startups or real world companies really, and say, okay, we want to have a mock interview, and then they ask those kinds of questions.
I was going to ask, like, your code is the first to pilot that the case study initiative with. So you had a case study from Space Pen that you worked on to get you more real experience. How did you find that experience working on a case study for Space Pen? And I guess what do you think that we should to try and do going forward to make that experience for your students more valuable?
Okay. It, it, it it was great having that the case study, and I think the best way you can help students is to have a lot more of those. But yeah, the first engagement with it was, and I'll never forget, once I was able to access it today, I was like, yes, real data, give me more. And and it was it's eye-opening again, because it takes away your not knowing. That's on the one hand. You also very, very quickly see the messiness of real world data. So you hear things about imputation and dealing with messy data, but then to then see it on the first hand, because in a lot of the learning that you see across the board, it's very clean. It's like learning to ride a bicycle with training wheels from when you're 16 till you're 14, and then you are given a BMX bicycle and you're thrown in the middle of the expressway, and you're like, okay, so go. That's the world of difference between learning on paper and then um, engaging with data, real world data. But then seeing that, it's almost, it gives you a form of hormesis, so to speak. Like, okay, so this is what we'll be really, really doing with. Okay, so let's go. So yeah.
I have a
Yeah,
question for Dumebi.
yeah, sure.
Can I go, or do you want to add to what Ajibola said?
Yeah, well, I guess I was just going to say that there's a bit of a detective instinct, right? That you don't get from perfect data, because the path is really much laid out for you. But when you're working with real data, you have to build up that discovery skill of knowing where to look and what's leading to another line of investigation that could lead you to the answer. So completely agree. That's really important to develop. Yeah.
That's true. So my first question is to maybe. So to maybe you mentioned before, and even mentioned it today, that you had a similar idea that you wanted to execute, right? So then my question to you is, did you ever get to executing it, or why didn't you? And then my question to Emmanuel is, do you ever feel like your idea, anyone could execute it? Like, yes, you've started the gradient boost, but kind of like it's if anyone wanted to execute the gradient boost, they would. So those are my questions.
So mine was just a matter of time. So I just moved to Nigeria just over a year and a bit. So as many people know, the first year of moving to Nigeria is very challenging, and just settling. Yeah, it's. When I heard how hard it is to move to Nigeria, I was like, you know what, it can't be that bad. And then 3 days into it, I was like, wow, yeah, okay. And that was day three. That was day three. I was like, how am I going to do a whole year? Then I got to month 9. I was like, okay, I'm not yet. I'm still here. I've survived this. And then it got to the past year. So I just wanted to be very patient with settling, and also just kind of get this kind of a domain knowledge you need in a market like Nigeria. You just need to understand how things work. I make a lot of mistakes. So I kind of felt that I needed to develop that knowledge and experience. And I kind of felt I was getting there. But then seeing the gradient boost and how far it came, getting a feel of the team, my feeling was, I can help these guys, and why pull up my sleeves and try to compete? Why not help a team that you have some confidence in, and support that growth. So that's kind of the magic in sort of my interaction with the team initially, and where I kind of convinced myself I wanted to be. And yeah, so here we are. And the good thing is, the team has been very accommodating to my ideas. And what's great is that actually isn't far off their own ideas. It's quite nice to hear when I throw some wacky ideas out that Jasmine and Manuel are like, yeah, we talked about that already. Oh yeah, we thought about that already. It's really great to kind of know. Okay, great. So we all kind of know the potential of this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And also it's quite great because there's so much, so many ideas we've had, and in fact, there's a few things I wanted to add to our discussion yesterday that we haven't had a chance to do. So it just seems to be a great dynamic. So just kind of how it all kind of unfolded.
Love it, and I'm glad you joined the team instead of starting your own. You're a great ad. I'm enjoying it.
Great.
Emmanuel?
To answer your question, I think that it's very hard to implement an idea. It's very, very difficult. I think that yeah, it requires a lot of time. First of all, a lot of time commitment, a lot of being able to take in insights from your market to change the idea completely. Because what you may have, like the idea that we may have had in the beginning when we came to to start the gradient boost, is not it's not really the same as what we have now, because the idea evolves when you actually execute it and learn and get feedback from your market and from the people who join your team too. So can it be done? I think any idea can be done. It can be implemented with the right people, but is it going to be an easy process? Probably not.
Totally. So I think the reason why I asked that question is because from time to time I get the sense of you don't see the match done with your idea, right? And I go back to when you started talking to me, I didn't get the sense of you actually, it's, I don't know, it's like when you were conversing with me, it felt like, okay, I've thought about this. The way you presented it is was like it was an idea, it wasn't something you had already touched on. Or when I went on the website and you're telling me you had already gotten students, there was traction there, and it's something I didn't think you spoke of as much as you should have, right? And the other thing is, I find so many people, especially in my space, thinking that, yeah, I have an idea, but anyone can do it. But what we forget is not most people think the way we think, right? So I all in all, I'm just trying to say I'm doing gradient boost, and from time to time I feel like, Emmanuel, you should post and just look and see, oh my god, like the things you've done with gradient boost and just the whole team. Yeah.
Yeah, Manuel, you can be way too modest sometimes. You should blog. Yeah, you used to blog all the time.
I think it's more of a time issue at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can start a YouTube channel. Wait, we have a YouTube channel. You know what I mean.
Jasmine, what's wrong?
I'm not gonna give you excuses. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess to seal things off, so in exact terms, and I'm looking at specifics now, where do you see Gradient Boost September 2021?
Wow.
I was with you until September 2021.
The way 2020 went, yeah. Like
There's things you can't predict. Obviously, like Jasmine pointed, 2020 was like a curveball completely. No one expected what was going to happen this year. But we see ourselves ideally having a year-long data science program. Split it into 3 parts. There's going to be the introduction data science program for 4 months. There's going to be an internship in between that. So it's either you'll get hired by a company to intern with them, or there'll be an internship that is a virtual internship set up by us with case studies from different companies. To just give you like more experience after you're done with that initial program. And then you come back for a 3-month intermediate program, which is more, I guess, theory stats heavy. You have another internship, and you come back to work on projects purely. We ideally want that model to allow students to be able to join without having to pay as much as they're paying currently, or having to pay anything at all. That's the ideal model. And just like go back to one of the challenges we're noticing is that there's this issue around internet connectivity with some learners. We want to try and work around that either through partnerships with co-working spaces, that's the assumption we have currently, or other parties that would allow us to be able to give students a space to work from with decent internet connection. We also see ourselves focusing on other courses, not just like the data science program we currently have. We want to be able to get courses for executives to help them understand guess the value of data science for their ventures in just how to apply data science in their own businesses and how to build a data science team. I think maybe we can touch on that a bit more. And we also see a potential of, I think this is kind of like Jasmine's somewhat vision, being able to have the final part of the curriculum become a chance for students to work on paid projects from other companies that are willing to outsource data science work. That is, I think Dumebi can add on to the executive program part, and then Jasmine can add on to the outsourcing vision, and then Vivian can add on to like how we see the brand ambassadors playing a role in building the community going forward.
Yeah, completely. So, everything starts from the top. And even if you have a very competent data science team, right, if you haven't got the leadership, it's not going to grow. And you might find that, the team isn't fully utilized and there's no strategy behind leveraging that team to its fullest. So I think Great Boots has the right approach with the sort of the training, particularly those who are very brand new to the field. But it is also an importance on those who are leading those teams from an executive and strategy level, right? Data science can be applied in so many different ways. And having an executive trained on the best practices, on the opportunity, on the direction they can take, on strategy, on culture, there's so much that needs to be learned from an executive level to be able to really use those teams to its fullest. What right now, there isn't a lot of places for them to go. And you find that they all make the same initial mistakes trying to get that team to where it needs to be. They rely on third-party vendors. They spend too much on tools. They spend too much on tech. They spend too long on doing certain things. And so we're seeing that there's an opportunity to really get these companies equipped to then manage these teams as they bring themselves into hiring more people and getting these interns and getting these full-time staff in. So that's kind of where it's heading. And I think it's a good idea.
Jasmine?
Yeah, and on the greater pipeline, I think it's more of us not just focusing on let's just get as many students to the door and take their money, done. That's kind of like a lot of boot camps what they do, and that shows in terms of how they actually approach their, like let's just give them a bunch of videos so that it goes quicker, so that they, they of course want to focus on outcomes. But I think one thing we're looking at is we're trying to zoom out and we're trying to look at the entire ecosystem. The companies need to be data enabled. They need to be able to understand how to use their data, and they need to be able to have the talent to move those companies forward. And as those companies grow and become more data empowered, then there's more room for talent, so on and so forth. So there's like two sides here. And I think that because we want to kind of grow the entire ecosystem, we're doing a greater service here, and we're going to have a bigger impact, and it's all going to cycle in, and not just for the good of the Gradient Boost, but for the good of the continent. So with that in mind, it makes sense for us to plug into the different spaces there. So yes, we are building talent, and we're also building, we're trying to get companies to give case studies so that the talent is best tuned to what the local companies do need. But then on top of that, we want to be able to also help, like I said, get those businesses to a point where they can be data enabled, or get companies that are already there a little bit further down the road. So for example, being able to have students actually, once they get to a certain point, so this is more so for like the year-long course, but getting them to a point where they're going to be able to actually earn money while they're in the program, because we also understand, we want to compensate people for their work, things like that. So allowing us to work in an advisory capacity, and even have the Gradient Boost be just like an employment option. So whether that's like on a freelance basis or whatever. So as students grow, and even if they graduate, so for example, Ajibola, you graduate September 2020. September 2021, you might be a senior or like a mid-level freelancer with us. You can earn money with us and grow with us as well, kind of thing. And we can have companies come in and like give us work, give us tasks, things like that, if they're not ready to, for example, like hire a full team, things like that. But it all really just ties into that we should be growing the entire ecosystem if we want us to be successful, and we want everyone else to be successful too.
Yep, I agree with everything. I was actually listening to the point that I was still waiting for you to continue. But yeah, in terms of like building the ambassador program, I'd have to echo some of the stuff Jasmine, maybe and Emmanuel said. So for me, come September 2021, for sure, I know we'll be like, won't have to be looking for leads to be organic. We will be getting leads, right? That's number one. And number two, the fact that we are stressing on the kind of quality talent we're bringing out of the gradient boost. I also foresee us being like the go-to when it comes to anything data on the continent, right? For example, being in the startup space, you find that it's very, very hard to actually get access to not agriculture, African data, be it in the agricultural sector, fintech. I don't know, it has something to do with how it is taught and how it is shared, right? But the fact that we are actually interacting with companies and startups and creating those networks, I feel like we will be the go-to when it comes to wanting anything African data, number one. And number two, being able to get insights or use the African data that's already gathered, right? As Jasmine had mentioned, helping companies set up their data science units, that would be us, right? So I just thought to add that. When it comes to our brand ambassador program, we want to create a community whereby you are just not part of the gradient boost when you're a student, but you're also part of our community before you become a student, while you're a student, and after you graduate. What I mean by that is if you have any questions or you want to interact with us, maybe experience the gradient boost before even joining, that will be accessible to the masses. Number two, if you are a student and you want to maybe share what you've been able to learn, maybe through our workshop, because we learn by doing, that will also be made possible. And lastly, once you graduate, the way Jasmine mentioned, for example, if once Ajibola graduates and I know Ajibola will be now a senior person in a company. Instead of us partnering with other companies, why not partner with the students who already went through their program? They know our quality, they know the kind of work we do at the Gradient Boost. So then we're partnering with them for them to give us their case studies and work with our current students because they've been there, they already understand that. So that's the whole idea around the brand ambassador program. We do recruit across all countries in Africa, but right now we are focusing on Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. And yeah, the program is already rolling, and soon you guys will see the activities we have around that. Yep.
Just to wrap up the vision, just going forward, it's like we're building an ecosystem for data science ecosystem through courses or programs that equip individuals looking to get into the data science space with skills that allow them to get data science roles. That's data analyst roles, data scientist roles, business intelligence analyst roles, just the roles in the ecosystem in general. And we plan to do that through the mentor-guided system that we have right now, through case studies and through having access to a community of data scientists or brand ambassadors and ex-alumni, or alumni rather, the Gradient Boost alumni who can support students through the course and after the course, because sometimes you need to network to get a job. So we want to build that system within the Gradient Boost ecosystem. And from a company perspective, we are building a hiring pipeline for potential talent going forward, and an option for them to outsource data science work where that is required, and to upskill their existing executives with an understanding of how to use data science to scale their ventures. That ties up the vision just going forward. Just to wrap things up, do you have any last questions you want to ask, Ajibola?
I believe that about covers it. Seeing what the vision is, seeing down the pipeline for what's coming up next for the Gradient Boost. Yeah, I'm happy with what I see.
Awesome. Any closing remarks from anyone?
Within the
Get Jasmine some coffee.
Good luck to Ajibola in the internship. I'm pretty confident you'll do well. Be sure to share with us your story and experience afterwards, and definitely reach out to the Gradient Boost as well during that internship for any support or any guidance you might need. Right. So it's as Vivian correctly said, it's now you're part of the ecosystem, you're part of the community. So don't feel even now that you're one of the senior boys, that you're alone. So you always have us to at your back.
No, we're not letting you leave the community. You're not allowed.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Then I think that wraps up the podcast. And have a good weekend to everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.
Cheers, everybody.